Continuing the series on locations in Berlin today, where you can get a feel for what Berlin of 100 years ago or so felt like. Today I'm going to turn to Anhalter Bahnhof. Anhalter Bahnhof was one of the great railway stations of Berlin. At the time it was built, it opened in 1876. It was the largest railway station in continental Europe and remained so for a number of years. It wasn't Berlin's busiest. That title goes to Potsdamer Bahnhof just up the road, but nevertheless, it carried something like 44,000 passengers every single day. It was six platforms coming out from an enormous uh, ticketing area and series of platforms under a covered shed area. Um, Incredibly impressive to look at. And the great thing about it is that today you can still see a significant portion of the grand facade. If you find it and stand in front of it, it's an impressive building. But what you then have to understand is this is less than half of the over 100-meter width that the original facade stood at. If you go behind that facade, there's not a lot to see now. There's a performance area with a modern style roof and everything. But if you go beyond that, you will find some area of parkland where you can see broken areas of the old platforms that starts to give you some idea of the scale. If you continue further, you'll eventually come to the river. If you cross over the river at one of the bridges, you can find the Deutchestechnikmuseum. And the museum contains some real gems for understanding and getting an idea of Anhalter Bahnhof, because the site of the museum includes several elements of the extended station structure. Um, the first thing I would look for if you go there, which I thoroughly recommend, it's a great museum, is that there are two statues there, night and day, that stood on the facade. Those were saved and preserved. The second is if you go to the railway sheds, you will find that the sheds have been incorporated into the museum and contain locomotives and carriages and so on. These sheds were the locomotive sheds for Anhalter Bahnhof, where the trains themselves were stored, and they and their turntables still survive and give you an idea of what that working station might have been like. Perhaps best of all, there is a wonderful scale model of Anhalter Bahnhof in the 1930s. If you come out of the main part of the museum and move a little to the east, you will find an area of the museum that is fronted by a display called Spectrum. You'll see it by its multicolored logo. This is Anhalter Bahnhof goods section, goods station. And this was where all the freight came through. And you can get an even clearer idea of the station from this. There is the offices at the front. You will then see beyond it the sheds on both sides of this of what were the tracks going down the left and the right. And so if you stand there, you can get a real idea. You can almost imagine, you almost smell the steam and the coal of those old trains moving in and out of Berlin, taking and carrying goods to and from the south. And of course, the passengers would have been traveling to and from the south because Anhalter Bahnhof served the south. It served Austria, Hungary, and the Balkans, Greece, and also across into Italy. This is where the trains went to from Anhalter Bahnhof. So a fantastic location, great museum, and a place where you can really get a feel for what Berlin of the 1920s was like for the people who travelled to and from the city. Thanks very much. If you've enjoyed this content, please follow or subscribe for more.